So our next roundtable is starting now. The title is Textile to Textile and Circular Fashion, Ambitions and Realities. So I will ask our speakers to introduce themselves one after another. Maybe we can start by you, Manisha, and we go in this direction.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
So my name is Manisha Marival. I work for SETI. It is the European Center for Textile Innovation, and we are based in near Lille, Turquoise.
Hello, so my name is Mathilde Poulet. I'm a senior project manager and I've spent the last nearly 10 years working in textile circularity. Started in technical textiles, so more of a carbon fiber world, and then more recently moved to more usual textiles with textile to textile recycling at Carbios, who's recycling polyester.
Okay, hello, I'm Ella Mensink. I'm the CEO of Bright Fiber Textiles. I'm in circular textiles for 12 years. I set up the first circular Dutch knitwear brand on the market, and at the moment we have Bright Fiber Textiles, which is a private label company and an end-to-end solution provider. So we make from old clothes new fibers, new yarns, new fabrics and end products. And we have a new factory. We launched it in Amsterdam in April last year. And I think we're one of the first that we have the 3 steps of sorting, cleaning, and fibering old clothes in colors and in compositions and making new resources from it on a larger scale. So that's what we do.
Thank you. Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Garten. I'm advocate for circular ecosystems and supply chains. My background is really from municipal waste management, where we were trying to find all the probable or possible circular solutions for the mixed textile waste that we're generating, and different strategies that we can implement.
Hello, my name is Petra Schweiger. I'm Austrian and I've been in the industry also for quite some time, 20 years. I started off in our linear supply chain. I was working out of Asia most of these 20 years. I did everything from QA, QC, product development, sourcing and buying. And then I thought, okay, what is this? That's when I shifted then to sustainability back then. Back then we were mainly talking about organic cotton. I am freelancing now. I do usually long-term projects, and my main assignment today is Rehabs, which is an organization based out of Brussels. And with our members, our main objective is to scale textile to textile recycling.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is François. I have a small intelligence and analytics companies. We work with a bunch of organizations across the fashion ecosystem and beyond, doing research around how to improve economic and environmental efficiencies.
Great, thank you. My first question is a little bit provocative. It is, as clothing production increases, can textile waste be reduced? And if so, how? And also, what role can brands and manufacturers play? Maybe you want to start?
Yeah, okay, I'll start. So, yes, of course, we can reduce the textile waste by simply using the 7 Rs of the circular economy, so which are rethink, repurpose, reduce, reuse, recycle, repair. As far as rethink comes, you know, when we think about rethinking, we immediately feel, oh, we should rethink the business model, yes, but we can also start rethinking right from how to make the garment. Today, 15 to 20% of the waste is done at the stage when you're cutting, basically. So we can also think about zero design waste. In fact, we have a company here who I met, Catty Fashion, who is showcasing a full collection of zero design. So this could be one. The second could be repurposing, which is around upcycling. We have been hearing about it. Then reduce also the production, the quantity that is made. So almost 15 to 30% of the production, which is over 100 million pieces, goes completely unsold. So to rethink how to produce, why to produce, when to produce, make products that are durable, that last longer, so we don't have to produce them again and again. Reuse, so second-hand. This has become a success, and in fact, the Federation of Circulaire says that this is going to be around 26 billion euros of business by 2030. Recycle, I think we'll talk about it a lot, and repair. So I would like to talk a little about repair. This is something that we had completely lost, at least in France, because it was costing a lot. And people thought it was easier to buy new garments, but thanks to the work done by Refashion, repair has again come into discussion. Now we have the possibilities to repair our clothes and to get bonuses on it, so it costs less. And again, FMC says that it's going to be a multi-million euro business in the years to come. So yeah, these are businesses which have already shown that they can be scaled up, and they can also become quite profit generating in the years to come. So this is, I've taken a little longer time, but this is what I have to say.
Thank you. Hélène, maybe?
Yes. When I talk about circular textiles and circular fashion, we believe that it's more about recycling than about reuse. And although we have a sorting company and we think that reuse is very important and we should really do that, if you look at the ultimate producer responsibility, the new legislation, most of the companies and the brands, they all focus on reuse because that's more easy. But actually in the Netherlands, we don't have that much demand for reuse. We don't have enough shops to live up to the ambitions of the EU Union and also the Dutch law. And at the same time, the amount of production is increasing with 60% until 2030, and people wearing less and less long their clothing, decreased with 40%. So you see the waste mountain is growing enormously. And at the end of the chain, even if you do reuse longer, you still need to do something with that waste. So I think if we really talk about circular textiles, you're talking about recycling old clothes. And another thing what I would like to say is there's also, when you look at the fair, you see a lot of industrial waste recycling, which is nice. I'm an economics from origin, and I see that as a cost efficiency activity. It's important, needs to be done. We also blend with industrial waste, but there's a flourishing market for 80, 100 years of industrial waste. That's not the challenge. The challenge is old clothes. So if you talk about circular textiles, for me, you talk about old clothes. And recycling needs to have much more priority than it gets now. And I think also for the brands, they have the advantage of that everybody's talking about all the other R parts of the R letter, how you say that. But I think recycling needs much more focus and much more urgently, because if you do use recycled material at the beginning of the chain, you reduce 50% CO2 emission.
Okay, real call to action. Thank you. Maybe François.
You know, I see two tracks in this, right? Like there's the track where you say, well, we can find solutions to help curb the volume question and say we can find alternative business models and revenue opportunities, so we don't need to rely as much on volume. But to your question, that is, how do we reconcile growth in volume with curbing waste? I don't think the answer is very straightforward. So it's a potentially, because we've seen before the sort of pipe dream thinking that we can recycle our way of the problem. If you follow conversations on plastics packaging, you've probably been exposed to that with a negotiation on a global treaty around, you know, curbing plastics waste, and how it sort of all goes to, okay, well, if we can capture everything and recycle everything, then we don't have a problem, which is slightly idealistic. If we want to try and reconcile, I mean, from all the research I've done in the space, if we want to try and reconcile volume with waste reduction, I think there's like 3 conditions we need to meet. The first one is we need quality feedstock that can be circulated efficiently and with minimal added footprint. Because all the 3 are important, right? Like quality feedstock doesn't necessarily mean highly durable stuff. It means stuff that can be put back through any sort of post-use system very efficiently. it needs to be easily circulated, so it needs to be very easy to recycle. And then minimum footprint, because one of the sort of worries we can have is if we start thinking about just the energy cost of recycling mountains of post-consumer clothing through, if we look at chemical recycling, which is the sort of highest hope, very energy-intensive processes, there can be rebound effects that are sort of worrying at a time where it seems like technology is moving in a direction that takes more and more energy. And so finding ways to maintain that energy efficiency seems quite critical.
Yes.
Can I respond to that? Yeah.
And then.
One small remark. Yeah, you said a small sentence like there's a lot of hope on chemical recycling. I saw different trends going on. Like everybody was first really enthusiastic about chemical recycling, and then the trend went a little bit down again, and then it went up also because chemical recycling, apart from the energy, also had huge investments, and they've mostly focused on, the technology is not completely ready yet, and they mostly focus on one or the other kind of input material, which is the reason that they have to source worldwide. The other part of is mechanical recycling or thermomechanical recycling, also somewhere in between. We do mechanical recycling, and we also found out in the last 10 years that there's a very negative idea about mechanical recycling in the past. But we also developed that, and we came to better fibers, better yarns, etc. So mechanical recycling uses less chemicals and stuff. It's also more flexible. It's more sustainable than chemical recycling. It's more flexible in the sense that, for instance, we can process many different compositions instead of one. So that is it's same like the energy sector. You have solar panels, you have windmills, etc. It's a combination of solutions. And I think, don't forget mechanical recycling, and when you talk about the opportunities for recycling.
Thank you. Petra.
Yeah, can I just add? I think you're absolutely right. We see already there cannot be only one way. I think that's super clear also. Addressing these mountains of waste, clearly there need to be different approaches and different methods, different technology as well. That I think we need to keep in mind, especially when we talk about circularity. We are somehow still bound by the waste hierarchy. So I was working with a sorter years ago who was saying the waste hierarchy is in my blood. And I think we need to acknowledge that within the waste hierarchy, there must be a little bit of a lenience. First of all, there will always be garments that are full garments and may be good for resale, but they are no longer marketable anymore just because they are super outdated, they come from grandparents, they are, just not sellable anymore. And I think here is this distinction between these two we also need to make. If these materials are good enough for recycling, I think they should go into textile-to-textile recycling.
Yes, so you offered me a direct bridge to the next question, which is mechanical and chemical recycling. What are the most promising advances? Maybe Anna, you are our expert on this.
First of all, just like Petra said, it's not one against the other. No. I think they're complementary, and we need as many solutions as we possibly can, because each of these has got its own advantages. But going back to looking at the big volumes, as in what we're producing today, not a single solution at the moment can take what we have already produced and utilize it 100%. Each solution sort of addresses a different stage of the life cycle, for example. Let's look at cotton. You've got certain quality cotton that's good enough for mechanical recycling. At some point, the fibers are too short, in which case the chemical recycling can come in. So they are addressing different issues. There's the color issues, there's components issues, there's long different processes that need to take place for each of the solutions. But the sort of understanding is that we are not there yet. The volume of recycling is not 100% to 100% because there is damage all along the life cycle of each garment. There's the damage during the design process. Things are put in there, coloring, extra chemicals and so on to extend the life of it, but it is a problem at the end of life. You get damage during the use lifetime of the garments or the washing, the treatments and wear and tear. And then when you're collecting it and sorting it, you get damage there. How do you collect without materials getting damp, moldy, all of these issues? So 100% does not go back as 100% feedstock. So it's a sort of understanding that the big systems, there's waste at every stage, and each of these solutions has got an answer, but they have to be working together.
Thank you for this meaningful clarification. Ellen, you wanted to add something?
Yes, it's also what we see is that we look, because we have a sorting plant, and so what we cannot sell for reuse, we recycle, and we make an analysis of all the materials that come in that are not used for reuse. And then you see different streams, different structure, different colors. And some of the waste streams that we cannot process making high-value yarn, we sell them to another company that makes woven from it. And there's another company that makes tables. So you can also, I always say, you can upcycle it much more, or maybe another time. We can also blend with chemical recycled fibers so that you can, yeah, it's complementary in the sense from a technique, but also from fibers, no? And you can always put it into the wall before you start burning it. And now in the Netherlands we have such an overstock that apart from the fact that it's better to reuse it at the beginning of the chain, it's also sad if you burn it because you get CO2 emission also. So anyway, so I agree with all of you. Let's say it like this.
Thank you. Mathilde?
Maybe if we look at more technical aspects about chemical and mechanical recycling, in the recent years, I think one of the great advances has been anything that could deal with mixed fibers. Because if you look at clothing that people wear, a lot of it is mixed fibers. And some of them, like polycotton, for example, are very hard to potentially reuse for a long time because they do get damaged quite easily through washing and actually wearing the clothes. And none of the technologies were initially developed to recycle mixed composition. And if you look at the recent years between Worn Again, Circ, Re-Up, there's been a lot of technologies which are quite strongly scaling up now, either a mix of mechanical and or chemical technologies, which will eventually lead to the capacity of recycling mixed composition, and I think that's one of the great advances, at least in the last years.
Sure. Actually, in the Netherlands, there is this event, Circulaire Textile Days. You went there, I saw your booth there. There are many different solutions, and some are working on the fiber separations and stuff. But also, of course, this is an issue that can be tackled at the very beginning of the process. And something is also the fact that due to the lack of solutions like everywhere, some companies, they send their waste back like to a very far away countries for the treatment. So that's also something we have to keep in mind. So my third question is, apart from combating the fast and ultra-fast fashion model, what are the main challenges and priorities for improving the treatment of textile waste, in your opinion? If you want, or any... I think you all have something to tell about this. You can start and...
So, what you have said, Ellen, that, recycling must be given more priority, etc., etc. I'm all with you. And in fact, I must be that's what we sell. So it's my job to say yes, recycle, but we will not be able to recycle, number one, the quantity of waste that we are creating. So I would still emphasize on whatever we can not create, let's not create. But once that waste is created, you yourself are doing the separation. You know, it's such a difficult task to separate and make the right material for different recyclers who do need a homogeneous amount of material coming in. And the latest Dutch study that said, which was published in August, which says in one season there are 600 different compositions that are mixed. So how do you tackle this? And if I remember correctly, they said finally 7 to 8% is what we get for recycling. And why is it so? Because none of the, even if we reduce the amount of what we are producing, we're still not producing it to be recycled. So this has to be really understood by people who are putting the clothes in the market, that if they do not make the clothes to be recycled, we cannot by some magic recycle them. And another thing that we do not talk so much about is, especially in case of mechanical recycling, if I put 100 kgs in, after dismantling, I'll still be, there would be 20 to 30%, depending on the material, I'll have a waste. So 100 in, after dismantling will not become 100 out. And if I talk before dismantling, 100 in becomes basically 60. Or 50. So this is also, so if we have to make 100 in is equivalent to 80 and not 50 or 60, then we again have to think about how to make these clothes right so that it makes financially feasible for a recycler to recycle, because removing all those hard points, removing the blends, removing the different, different materials. This is a very costly process, and that is why also today many of the the material which is good for recycling is sent to Asia for dismantling. This is what a lot of companies in Italy do. So it goes to Asian countries, it comes back. This is something that we really have to think about. And then secondly, of course, there are the chemicals which also sometimes are disruptors of recycling. I hope that DPP, when it comes into place, will help recyclers, understand better what is a good quality, bad quality. Having said that, even if the DPP is put in place today, it will take another 3 or 4 years for those garments to come in the market for recycling. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to do in the current scenario as it is today.
True.
I think in line with what Manisha was saying, so there's that question of design for recycling, so potentially favoring monomaterial instead of mix, that's one thing. But also when you look at the waste produced or the loss that you have in sorting preparation, there's going to be that question about financial viability and any money that can be injected into the process to make sure that collectors, sorters, preparators are financially viable, considering the loss they'll have in the process. Like how EPR through PROs are going to work that out so that even if you get 100 in and only 40 out, is someone going to pay for the 60 missing? How is it going to be covered for the chain to work? So that was just to add to what Manisha was saying.
Yeah, I think design for recycling is of course very important. But what I notice when we talk to the brands about making a new circular product, and we say like, hey, they always ask us first like, hey, we have this pile of sweaters or jeans, can you do something with it? And then we say like, we're not a closed loop company or organization, we're a system change company. So we can do that, but there's a lot of piles in the street. Let's work on that. But it's a good question actually, because when you start to work on post-consumer old clothes, they start to realize, like, hey, we put 5% elastan inside, but if we put 2, we can actually mechanical recycle it, you know? And they're like, hey, why don't we do that? We can also just knit it a little bit differently or put another. So it makes them aware of the necessities for design for recycling. By just doing it, they fill in their own gaps. And for me, what I see, what is very urgent to accelerate the fashion and circular fashion industry is also that the governments, not only on the Dutch level, they do that, but also on the European level, that they put also the brands responsible, not only by paying money per kilo of importing into the Netherlands or in Europe, which is the new legislation, but actually putting it on an individual brand obligatory to do that. Because if they don't do that, brands just pay and then they do nothing, you know? And they need to do something because we said stop talking, start walking. Because if they start doing it, working on projects on circular fashion, they start to learn, and they learn a lot. Because circular fashion is not easy, it's difficult. It's about logistics, it's about new yarns, new fabrics, it's about positioning that circular item in a new way in your collection. So there's a lot of work to be done, and they don't have the time for it. So for me, legislation is also a very important thing.
Yeah, I was actually curious about these specific questions because in the Netherlands, it's true that the streets are so clean and there are all the different garbage for all the different category of waste. And I see that the people are very educated in the sense that you have a lot of craftsmanship boutiques with machines in the windows and such. Things that we don't see so much here in Paris, for instance, at least at the moment. And I was wondering if it's a cultural thing that comes naturally to the people, or if it's an effort, specific effort from the government. Or maybe I have an idealistic vision.
Some people say it's a Dutch thing, that if the people come in and you give them a cookie, then they open up the drawer and then they give you one cookie and they close it again, like they're very, you know. I don't think it's like that. Long ago, I worked for a company called Mama Cash, and they give microfinance around the world in development countries, and much of that money goes to women who work on their own sewing or making something. And I think it's the same like with food. People like food a lot, eat it, prepare it themselves. It's the same with fashion and with clothing. I started to realize the last 10 years there's a new development going on, a sort of a trend that people think like, hey, we can do it ourselves. And we like to make things ourselves. And there are new initiatives to setting up knitting companies, spinning companies. I think it's not differently, people are not different in the Netherlands than in France or in Spain or whatever. I think that it's sad that if we have new, like say, resources, like old clothes and stuff, to travel that waste around the world, whereas if we would make it in the Netherlands or within Europe, and you have enough spinners that make nice yarns, and we have enough weavers and knitters, why not do it closer by and also create that knowledge again, and do the same at the other side of the world instead of shipping waste streams around the world. So I don't think it's a specific Dutch thing. I think the Netherlands was always a little bit in front in terms of sustainability. So in terms of circularity, yeah, it's sort of a habit more in that respect.
But there are no specific effort from the regulation perspective or government
The regulation helped, of course. Like within France, the Netherlands was one of the second to implement that ultimate producer responsibility. That helps a lot because now a lot of brands become very nervous. And we even have like agents calling us from Bangladesh because these brands then ask in Bangladesh for clothing from post-consumer material, but they don't have it there actually. So actually they don't sort on post-consumer in Bangladesh, so they don't have the material there. So that's what's happening.
Okay, because I think when it comes to repair, Africa is at the top level of what we can find in terms of solution, actually, because they have so much waste to manage, and people culturally are used to recycle by themselves, like repair and stuff. I saw also in the Netherlands some repairing initiatives.
Yeah, that's one big United Repair Center.
Yeah.
And they became also big because Patagonia, one of the bigger brands, they are very in favor of repair, and they teamed up together. And then what happens is that other brands like Decathlon and Beversport and Kathmandu, they all look at them and think like, hey, Patagonia is doing it, let's do it also. So it's also an example, and we need these good examples of brands doing it and other brands following it.
Yes.
But here in France, you know, Veja has now put a repairing center, a training for repair in Roubaix. And I must say that, you know, they have had some very good successes, refashion, but now paying bonuses, people are going to repair the shoes and clothes a little more, and they become aware that it's
They
present.
did an advertising on TV on that.
Yes, and it's all the companies have to now have given information that you can repair. It's legally binding.
The thing is can I say something about repair? It's quite expensive to do a repair, so it's not really a business model, more in the sense that it's either service or it's getting traffic to your shop. It's not that repairing itself, because we looked at the business case, it's very needed and interesting, but for most of the brands it's mostly interesting from a perspective of giving some extra service.
Yeah, and building the customer.
Yeah, or getting the customer to your shop, which is also a good idea. Then they buy something new, but also let something repaired, so they don't buy two clothing, maybe only one. We hope.
François, maybe on that question, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think as we're seeing a European push towards extended producer responsibility, as the French government is launching a review of the extended producer responsibility, because the previous way of doing it seems to be reaching its limits. There's an opportunity to question a little bit the way we've been looking at collection and tackling some of the bottlenecks that we see. And I think there's an opportunity to, maybe rather than focusing on maximizing collection and sending it wherever it can go, which, you know, has been the model for now, maybe taking a slightly different approach and putting significant investment into scalable facilities across Europe that can take volume of garment and turn it into new materials. We've seen the French government supporting the CIRC to deploy a facility in Alsace, and then also maybe using EPR to financially support offtake agreements, because we know for a lot of recyclers, actually, offtake agreements are critical in order to develop the solution, get additional funding, etc. And finally, one of the things, and the effectiveness of it can be questionable, but I hear evidence that more and more companies are looking into it, is eco-modulation. That is, if you're doing certain things, you pay less than if you're not doing them from a taxation perspective. And that eco-modulation, if we want to incentivize sort of quality feedstock, whether it's highly recyclable or durable or repairable, you can use that to trigger the brands to adopt different design perspectives. And I think when it's just one country like France or the Netherlands doing it, you know, it's 70 million people. It's got a small market globally, so is it worth getting 800,000 back at the end of the year? Not sure. If you're looking at 300 million people as a market, there's potentially a very different case to be made if you're able to sort of save even a few P's per product that you sell in the market. So I think thinking about how EPR can be deployed in a way that doesn't necessarily look at how do we maximize collection now and what are the proper KPIs that we set for that EPR so that it solves waste for the long term is quite critical.
Absolutely. You wanted to add something, Petra?
No, I just, on EPR, I mean, probably you all followed. Last week, it was finally agreed in the EU Parliament that it is going to come. What does that mean? It has to go to the national governments now. So there is a little bit, of course, the danger that we're going to have 27 different schemes. So everybody's shouting for harmonization, whatever that means. Nobody really knows what we mean by harmonization. But eco-modulation is definitely going to be super important. I think that's also really the only way to go forward, especially for brands. in all this conversation, we've seen that we have a lot of technologies, infrastructure is really building, but what's the biggest bottleneck is really the demand. I think there is barely any demand for various reasons. When it comes to mechanical recycling, I'm a total proponent of it. Why cotton in, cotton out? There is no other technology today that has an output of cotton. For mechanical recyclers, then going into yarn spinning fabric mills, I think for brands, it's extremely difficult to integrate materials into their existing supply chains. Just most of them work directly with the garment factory, so it's extremely difficult for them to really understand or like to know the other tiers. For chemical recycling, cellulosic, it's a different kind of conversation than polyester. Polyester, we have so many different technologies coming up, but they are at demonstration plant capacities, which means 1,000 kilotons a year, where the capacities for pilots are full and very expensive. So that has to build. And this is where the offtake agreements should come in, because that really secures the plant's financing, right? So we have to look at it again, different technologies, they have a different set of challenges as well. And EPR, one thing I want to say, we do have sorters that sort for resale, that's their bread and butter. They are going to fight for their share as well. So the EPR will not all go to the recycling industry. And if it goes, correct me if I'm wrong, if it goes to the national governments, they probably will be the ones deciding as well what to support, right?
Well, I think this is where there's a big confusion between the roles and responsibilities. As an EPR is putting a responsibility on the producers, but at the end of the day, are they financially or operationally responsible? And if we're collecting as waste stream, or are we collecting as donations? And once you're collecting as donation, it has a completely different status to the material which is collected by municipalities as a waste stream, in which case you need a waste end of waste status, and then suddenly you're going into a completely different industry and standards than what you're used to doing. And I agree that EPR is in principle, but the reality is that the interpretation is down on a national level, and no country is an island that has a circular system within it. We haven't even got textile industry in Europe enough to be competitive, let alone on a country level or regional level. So we need local solutions for local systems and some way of not trying to squeeze circularity into an economic linear system. And that's what we're trying to do at the moment. We're trying to look at the volume reducing the cost, but the reality is that you have to look at it as a big system. And this is where, is it municipal responsibility? And that's what it has been up to now. In Finland, we've basically had separate collections since the beginning of January, but no waste management wants to continue that because suddenly the producers are going to be operationally in charge of that. So they've been scaling back, which means that we're actually taking steps backwards rather than increasing things forward. And this whole idea that demand, yes, absolutely, because the brands are the key into driving the whole wheel and the system. But you can produce yarn out of all sorts of blends, but will the brands buy it? That's the question. Is it commercially interesting?
Well, the thing is, it's a sort of a chicken and egg discussion always. You brought up a lot of different things, but let's first respond on the brands and the demands. Like also with eco-modulation, I think like our product is more expensive because we produce it regionally. So we have local material, we produce it until have nice material, and then we spin it in Europe and then also in Turkey. And our choice until now not to produce it in Asia makes our product much more expensive. It's not so much the material actually, maybe a little bit the yarn, but the really expenses come in like making the garment and step by there. So I wonder if that eco-modulation has a lot of influence. I think the most important thing is that the brands become obligatory to put the material inside. That will make the biggest difference. If we don't do that, that's one thing, then they will never do it because they don't have the time to understand it and they don't think about fibers and yarns. They buy end products. Maybe in the best, they buy fabrics, like the fair here. They don't buy yarns and they don't develop it. So somebody's got to develop it, no? And develop the yarns and the fabrics and take all that effort. And somebody has to invest in all the stock to build up the material and all the yarns and the fabrics. And this is the reason that in the Netherlands, like the recyclers, we're about 8 or 9 of them, I initiated to come together with them and to work together also. We have a spinner, we have a recycler, we have chemical plants, we have mechanical plants. And they are actually doing all the investment for producing new yarns and new fabrics. Like I'm walking around here talking to fabric producers like, are you willing to produce with my yarns a new fabric? And they're like, oh yeah, maybe now it's interesting because I see this legislation. But when it's really interesting, when I have big brands like supporting it. And then you have to realize one brand comes in and they say, like huge brand, and they say, can I make like 500 or 1,000 T-shirts? And you can imagine how much work I put in it, because I hope that in the end they buy 20 or 30 or 50,000 T-shirts. No? And all this investment money, until the eco-regulation starts to actually work, and if it works, it takes another 2-3 years, you know, when it's implemented. So my biggest, why I put this every time is 2 things. First of all, the legislation needs to change in the sense that the brands don't only need to pay, they need to become obligatory to put a minimum percentage of old clothes inside their collection. Only then they will actually do it. The same thing is what we do is make it very easy for them. So this is the reason why we're a private label producer and not sell fibers and yarns, because the yarns and the fabrics still need to be developed. So we do that for them and make it very easy so that they, when they come into a shop and say, hey, this is a nice T-shirt, you can just buy it. And then we need to be by the EPR legislation, that money that comes in needs to be invested in companies that do the same as we do, so that they can live and don't go bankrupt until this eco-modulation and the volume goes up.
Yes.
In my opinion, we also need to understand that we shouldn't be making capsule collections of perfectly sustainable products that nobody can buy. What we're really going to make an impact with is if there's a small percentage in every single product that's been put on the market. And my personal feeling is that we start low and we build it up. We don't expect 40% perfection straight away. We need to start low on everything, and then that creates a demand in itself, because everybody must have something in there, but we're still learning.
Step by step, because otherwise we build too much complex things that brands cannot really follow. And
they need to start to learn, no? And I understand. I also want that. That's why I say put a minimum percentage on total collection needs to be inside. But then one brand says, okay, I start with this part of my collection, and some others say, like, I do everything, but then 5%. But it's difficult to understand, you know, the quality maybe is different, so you have to make more clear conclusions about a certain yarn for a certain application, and then consumers don't see any difference in quality. It's just, I mean, so this whole supply chain needs to learn, which is also a thing the coming year that needs to adapt. And we're only gonna increase demand if brands need to put it in, otherwise not going fast enough.
Sure. Mathilde, you wanted to add something? No? Okay, I thought. So to conclude, I will ask you one last question, and then we can have an exchange with our audience if questions are coming. So my last question is, in your opinion, which initiatives embody a form of success in terms of circular fashions? To finish on a positive note, maybe all of you can give some examples that are coming in your mind.
So, can you repeat the question? Which initiative is it?
Are inspiring, like, or embody a form of success in terms of circular fashion?
I think whatever, for example, companies like Decathlon have put up a lot of initiatives, including second-hand goods, which have become a real part of their business. It's not just, one small corner where you say, it's really a part of the business now. It's Patagonia is very well known for their repairing, for the longevity of the garments, for the incorporation of recycled materials. There are many small and big. For me, Decathlon and Patagonia are the ones which stand out.
Okay, thank you. Mathilde?
I think maybe to move away from big names that we know about, if you look at European-based, even if we take Inditex with Zara, for example, they've been working for quite a large number of years with Coleo in Spain, and they started to look at post-industrial waste. So we know it's the easy type of waste, but they started with sorting and mechanically recycle that waste with their Moroccan supply chain. And then now with Coleo, they are looking at applying some of the technologies to sort post-consumer waste and work with more advanced recycling technologies like chemical or a mix of thermomechanical to recycle the post-consumer that they can't do mechanically. So it's like a growing story of post-industrial to reintroduce within Inditex chains, and then how do you tackle more complex things and keep moving? So a bit different then.
Interesting. Thank you. Hélène?
Yeah, I agree with these examples. Actually, I'm very proud of the clients that we have at the moment because they take the effort actually to think about it and work on it. So for me, that are the good examples. Like King Louis, for instance, I don't know, it's a Dutch brand. They sell about 1,000 stores in Europe. We're now talking to quite a lot of brands and we're working for some of them. But what I think for us was a major change was the machines that we developed together with a Belgian company to actually sort on composition and on color and to actually automatically clean it. These are very important things because we never can go to volume if we cannot get a consistent level of quality material input on a higher volume, So that, I think, it's one of the major steps in our environment that made things possible.
Thank you. Anna?
I think it's when all the stakeholders come together and start discussing how they contribute to the big picture, building sort of trusting long-term relationships of where everybody gets to play their part, not in a system where you buy as cheaply as possibly and you sell as most expensive that you can, because in that way you're not creating a trusting understanding of all the different sort of actors who are needed. And I'm not talking about just textile to textile. You have to understand that there are a lot of different industry collaborations that need to take place as well. So we've got the cellulosics, which goes with the wood and pulp industry. We've got the plastics and the polyesters. We've got the recyclers who are doing their sort of manufacture parts. You've got the designers, but you've also got the waste collectors who are in the waste business. They don't understand anything about fashion or textile production. So there is no, even if within a brand you don't have a common understanding of language of everyone's functions, how are we in this big picture able to, so talking and telling what your needs are, what is the aim goal, and sharing those goals and finding those common sort of topics and making sure that you all know that you're going in for the same direction.
So yeah, I think a lot of it was said already. One thing I think our industry likes anyway is like creativity, and I think that's exactly what we need also now. Again, the term circularity is super wide. The other day there was an article about a Swedish brand not doing any ripped denims anymore. Why? Because they want to be able to, the denim should be resold, and why would they resell a damaged denim? I think that's already like a great thought, simple, but it is a circular thought. To German sports brands that look at their entire portfolio of mainly polyester anyway, but trying to understand what kind of categories can we actually shift from bottle to textile to textile to textile, subject to that's the technology we can use today, that's the output we can use today. everything else will come. So creativity, innovation is highly important, but that's what our industry is all about from the get-go.
Thank you.
I think there's maybe two examples that are interesting. The first one is what Paris Good Fashion is doing with the French ecosystem. So Paris Good Fashion is an NGO that convenes over 100 actors from the entire French ecosystem around sort of working together on very concrete actions. And there's been some work, for example, on eliminating hangers and polybags waste across the retail ecosystem. There's also been a lot of research that's been done on recycling technology, which sort of was the inception of Cirque coming to France. And the second example is Cirque. I think there's a lot of really interesting aspect because learning from the failures or the challenges of other recyclers, they've created consortium around Cirque Ready, which is a group of manufacturers and spinners, textile weavers that have experienced the materials that are able to very quickly bring it into their supply chain. So it minimizes the amount of work for brands who are willing to have this material put into products. And they've also created a sort of fiber consortium with other brands to sort of promote the use of recycled feedstock and sort of get the conversations going around how do we bring those materials to price parity, how do we massify volume, etc.
Also the Fédération de la mode circulaire in France, they gather a lot of initiatives, WeTurn and such, and many brands. And I also want to pay a tribute actually to the small brands who succeeded in making reuse of overstock materials sexy, because I think they do a great job on that, and thank you for raising the question of the creativity into this conversation, Petra, because I think it's really important for the final consumer and the change, the global change. So it's now time for the questions. Anyone has a question? I'm sure you have tons of questions, but you're too shy. Yes.
So hello for everyone who nearly knows me, everyone. Ellen, you were talking about that point that you were getting a little niche order, only 1,000 pieces, when you were waiting for 100,000. After working for more than 20 years in big global brands, I know that there is a position in the collection plan for every single style. So would you think that there are ways to detect the points for the recycled yarns, recycled fabrics, so that you could from beginning onwards work towards that point where you could position it?
Yeah, that's a good point. We're working on that. That's why we develop more different yarns. And when you get more suppliers that you work for in a longer term, that's what we try to do, work with a close group of companies for a longer term. And you have a broader variety of yarns in different colors, then you can easily also anticipate on new collections. We're about in that phase, and also in that perspective talking to brands. But then, of course, you need to have the yarns and the fabrics. And this is, I said for many times, I don't know if you call it a sand loper or something, we call it like that in the Netherlands, that we have a huge mountain of waste and we have a huge potential of demand. And in between, it's quite narrow, which is like the yarn and the fabric development that needs to broaden so that we can easily tap into these different positions. And we always have the discussion with every brand when they start with us, they ask like, also our advice, like where to start, where in the collection, should they start with the basic collection of your special items and where to position it in the shop, etc. That's also a discussion that's underestimated sometimes because it's a total new work field for them.
Thank you. Any other question? Okay, so if you do not have any other question and you have nothing else to add to this discussion, it's time to close this roundtable, and maybe you can discuss further with our great speakers. I really want to thank you all. You all come from quite far, actually, to be here and exchange on those so important topics. So thank you all. Thank you to our audience as well.